We are doing Extra Life again this year, where you can mash buttons, roll dice, play games, and help kids along the way. I hope you'll be a part of that with us. Stick around after the video for more information. Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Titans, the Season 2 premiere? Stick around and find out. Bow, 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 bow. All right. That's the closest I could get. Does somebody know the Young Justice theme or the, what was it called, Teen Titans Go theme? I don't know those. Anyway, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of the Season 2 premiere of the DC Universe streaming service program titled Titans. The synopsis on IMDb... actually, I forgot to look that up. Crap, I've got It Chapter 2 still on there. But, yeah, so if you saw Season 1, let me talk about Season 1, actually. I didn't do an actual review of Season 1, so let me just catch you up on my thoughts, because I binged Season 1 recently on a trial membership of DC Universe, and I had some likes and dislikes. I am a comic book fan, a DC comic book fan, and I loved Jeff Johns' series of Teen Titans. I even read some of, who was the author at the time? I don't remember, but about the same time, the Titans book that was coming out at the time. I enjoyed a lot of that, followed that for a good while, actually, through several writers, and so I'm definitely familiar with these characters, and the characters that are part of the classic lineup, and also some of the alternate lineups of the Titans and Teen Titans over the years, and so I did come into this with, some baggage, but over the years I've really become open to different interpretations of comic book characters. I've just been around long enough that I've seen enough interpretations, both in the comic books themselves and of course in movies and TV shows and stuff, that I'm pretty open. It's more about, is this a vibe or an interpretation or a tone that I like, whether or not it's quote-unquote true to the character. That does play in a little bit, but more and more I'm just open to, is it my style of story, So in Season 1, my dislikes would include, this is going to sound weird if you know me and my tastes, but the violence and the gore and the darkness. Now, normally, I'm totally up for violence and gore and dark, serious stuff, but especially early on as I was watching it, it almost seemed comical how far they were leaning into just being brutal with the are these superheroes? They're straight up, I don't want to say straight up killing people, but they are maiming them for life horribly, and blood is just flying everywhere and bones are breaking, and it's just, they're horribly maiming people. And part of that is because there's a theme going on with Dick Grayson, who is trying to come away from the dark place that he is in his crime fighting because of the influence of Batman in his life over the years. And so I understand that, but it wasn't just Dick Grayson that was doing some really violent, brutal stuff in the combat scenes and stuff. So I was just like, are they just really trying to we're cool and for grown-ups? It gave me a vibe a little bit like a little kid who's trying to use really nasty swear words and just really trying to sound tougher than he is, I just thought from the source material, I would understand that with a number of other characters, but with the source material here for the I don't mind a dark world. Let me be clear about that. I really enjoy dark worlds, but I like when it's appropriate to have a hero that is a shining light in the midst of that dark world. And I thought that at least a few of these characters maybe should have been a little bit more of shining lights than they were. But anyway, so that took some adjusting. I did eventually adjust to it over time and just kind of say, okay, well, let's just see what they're going for. Let's see what they're doing here. Let's set aside my preconceptions of these characters as much as I can. And so I at least adapted to it. And I think maybe it did either tone down or I just adapted to it over the course of the season. I didn't like the nuclear family, the villains in the first season. They were just a little too overstated. I wanted them to be a little bit more realistically psychotic instead of comic booky psychotic. I did not like Starfire or Corey's wardrobe. I'm glad they didn't go with the really skimpy stuff she's known for in the comics. So this is definitely an improvement over going that route. But I'm not into the like glamour disco 70s aesthetic, and so I was like, all that fur and stuff really took some doing for me to just kind of accept her. I didn't like the mousy version of the Rachel Raven character as this kind of like normal young teen kind of thing. I guess I just wanted something a little bit different. And something about her performance, I think, was also at play, and I'll get to that a little bit later. I didn't like Garfield, Changeling, or Beast Boy, whatever you want to call him, in his peppiness. He felt a little bit unnatural in the same way that the Flash in the Justice League felt a little bit unnatural to me. A little bit like trying too hard to be the peppy comic relief, you know. That was also toned down in the first season. He also had some variants, especially toward the end. He went through some dark stuff, you know, so I didn't like that at first, but and then there was at least one sexy scene in an episode focusing on Hawk and Dove that I was like, you guys don't need this, and I just kind of scrolled and skipped past it, so I don't know exactly how deep they went with that, but it was just not needed. What I liked, though, I liked the investment in Dick Grayson's character and his backstory, both his personal backstory and as it relates to Batman and what it revealed about Batman. Just seeing Batman through his eyes and stuff. You know, just in general, they invested in characters in the first season. Starfire's personality is not at all like her wardrobe, and so I was glad to get to know her a little bit more. And all these characters really have a haunted past, or they have internal struggles. It's very character-driven, and I really appreciate that. I like that kind of fiction far more than a story-driven or plot-driven or event-driven fiction. I loved the Hawk and Dove backstory episode. Really got into just some heavy and fragile places in their in the emotions specifically of Hank Hall, you know, and so I just really appreciated that. I love the wide use of historic Titan characters from the comics. I mean, Donna Troy and, of course, Hawk and Dove, and they brought Jason Todd in there. They're really just like putting their tendrils all over the DC universe and pulling in all these different characters, and I've really appreciated that. I liked Batman in the dream sequence, even though you never see his face, never really hear his voice, but it was cool to see him doing his thing, and I also liked about this show what I brought to it. There was emotional beats that I think affected me because I know more about these characters and their backstories and stuff, and it had enough in common with the versions I know in the comics that I could bring what I knew to help me emotionally invest, and it certainly did that. And I like the action and the visual style and the heavier, darker tone and stuff, so all that I really liked. Summary thoughts on the first season, before I can get into the second season premiere, sorry, is that, okay, this is not my Titans. It's not my Titans, it's not my Teen Titans, but I'm open to this reimagining, you know? I'm invested at this point. I'm ready for more. I'm not starving for it as I head into season 2, and I'm hoping to see heroes start to emerge as lights within a dark world rather than themselves remaining in a really dark place. So yeah, that's kind of where I came going into the premiere for season 2, and I think that there's reason to think that that is where they're going to be headed. I'm not going to be giving what I would call plot spoilers for the premiere of season 2, but I am going to spoil one character appearance. So if you don't want to know about a character that appears in this that has not appeared before, then you want to turn me off. They're continuing to aim in the premiere of season 2 for a dark, serious, quote-unquote superhero action. I put superhero in quotes because, like I said, they're all like doing brutal stuff to people, and straight up killing. You know, Nightwing did straight up kill some bad guys in one scene. In the first season, you know, so that tone really seems to be continuing. But in this premiere episode, there's really a turning point for the Dick Grayson character where it seems like he is definitively now going to be moving into the light, you know. But the jokes are rare, which I appreciate, and sometimes even successful as tension relief. And I think that's how jokes function best for me in this kind of, well, in movies in general, unless it's a straight up comedy, you know. So yeah, I thought that they worked well. There weren't too many of them. It continues to be very character driven. In fact, I don't want to say at the expense of, because they could, it wouldn't have to be at the expense of, but there's certainly, as far as the story goes, some plot logic that just really failed for me. There's a moment where Raven goes and pursues this exchange with Dick Grayson to try and help him come back from the darkness and stuff. And she said, I need to go see him first, And then it just seemed like, as I look back after that scene, when they went on after that scene to the rest of, the resolution of the plot, I'm like, you didn't have to do that with Dick Grayson. I get that you wanted to, but there was like bigger, major stuff going on with Trigon. Did you really need to go? I know you had a dream about Dick Grayson and da-da-da-da-da, and so it's all a big callback to that. But just plot structure-wise, I'm like, we didn't need you to do that. It seems a little more urgent to take care of the Trigon's gonna destroy the world situation. But anyway, and then also there was a news reporter that was like talking about the Titans as and referring to them as a new group of masked heroes. And I'm like, did you just watch that last scene? One of them was wearing a mask. There was like, I don't know, 6 or 8 of them or something like that. One of them was wearing a mask, and they are referred to as a group of masked heroes, but they were all wearing, like, except for one, their regular civilian clothes with no covering on their faces. So that was just a weird bit of, there's some issues with the writing in terms of plot logic, but I will take that. I will take that over the reverse. I would rather have a weak, illogical plot than uninteresting characters that make psychologically, unrealistic or just weird choices or whatever. And I felt like at least, well, I'm not saying that all the characters in this story made these psychologically realistic choices. It's faux psychological realism, that I really want, or at least I'll always take more than that and go, full on realistic psychology. But I at least want what I would call this faux realism in psychology, and I will gladly take that, which I think I got in this episode, over a really realistic plot or a beautifully constructed plot that just has characters that I don't get pulled in by at all, that don't seem to have realistic internal struggles, or at least interesting internal struggles. So this is very different from the CW DC universe, and I can only say to that, yay. I don't feel like it's a bunch of, models posing, and in between action scenes. I feel like they're really going for some good performance stuff here, The language and violence, is the same as season 1, and, those things don't bother me. Again, it's just kind of like the disconnect with what I would expect from the source material. But I've adjusted to it, or it's lightening up as of the premiere of season 2. And again, I think that's possible indications that they are heading toward the light by the end of this episode because of events that take place. It makes me feel like, okay, we've dealt with this major issue that was building and building all through the first season, and now we're starting into a new chapter in a multitude of ways that seems to include more brightness, both in the visual aesthetic and in the setting and the circumstances. It's just kind of a hopeful, dare I say, optimistic vibe. I do hope that the world and the threats remain dark, but I hope that our heroes, kind of start embracing the light a little bit more, and I think that's probably going to happen. But, there's heavy subject matter, too, and I don't mind heavy subject matter. There's a very sad scene involving heroin in this first episode. I was just like, dang, they're going to, like, a dark place, and I appreciate that. The characters are still sometimes just a little bit overstated, as I thought they were in the first one, but toned down in this episode compared to last season. So Gar is not as peppy. I mean, the circumstances didn't allow for as much pep. He did have one line in the middle of some bad stuff going on that actually got a chuckle out of me. But other than that, he wasn't like overly peppy. He was really brought down, I think, to the ground floor now that he's experienced some really messed up chunks of life. And then Jason Todd was not as irritating. He seemed to be humbled and, thought better of some of his actions in the first season. And so I thought, okay, so maybe they're not going full-on annoying Damian Wayne with Jason Todd, even though that basically Jason Todd was behaving like Damian Wayne does now when the character was originally conceived in the comics. But I was like, okay, maybe I can deal with this Jason Todd more than I thought I might. Okay, so the character reveal is Bruce Wayne. We've not seen his face before. They hadn't really cast him before, but he's been cast now and appears not as Batman, but man, when he was revealed, I thought, is this Alfred, his reveal shockingly indicates to me that we are probably in a future DC universe of sorts, where Bruce Wayne / Batman is like, a senior citizen. And I could believe that maybe he was still fighting crime. I mean, I think he must be, because Dick Grayson talks about Batman being off with the Justice League doing stuff, but he's got to be using like some kind of cybernetic or hydraulic enhancements or whatever he needs, servos in his suit to be able to keep up physically with what he used to be able to do back in the day, because he doesn't look like he would be capable of being the Batman, anymore. So anyway, that was really interesting, though. It made me all the more open to this version of the DC universe, because it says to me, okay, don't expect them to tie into movies or to what the CW is doing. Let's just treat this as the DC universe that's in the future. Maybe it's connected continuity-wise to those other universes. Maybe it isn't. It probably isn't literally supposed to be, because there's a character reveal that I think has already appeared in the Arrowverse, and I won't say who it is, but I'm like, oh, I don't think that's the same actor. And if this is a future version of the DC universe, he should be much older, unless he's got some way of youthening himself. But anyway, but I mean, if you want to kind of have a headcanon that tries to fit them all together, I think so far this Titans by itself, not Doom Patrol, because Doom Patrol has Cyborg in it, and that doesn't work. But, just Titans by itself could possibly, work in some kind of a headcanon if you're able to overlook a few minor details. Anyway, the story does not interest me. I'm not interested at all in the story, but I'm invested in the characters. And the major change in the status quo and the story location at the end of the premiere episode of Season 2 make me very interested in what personal journeys these characters will go on together. I love that there's a big change of status quo. And I love that the characters seem to have hit a pivot point from where they were going in the first one. That's what I love, a show where you can watch it, and by the time you get to the third or fourth season, you look at who these characters are, and then you think back to where they were, who they were in the first season, and they were very different. I love that. That is exactly what I want in a show. And it looks like this is going to give me that in a superhero, packaging that will resemble in many ways DC characters that I have invested in for many years prior to this. As far as the cast goes, the cast really grew on me over the course of Season 1. It really was not hitting for me, right away with the first 1 or 2 episodes, especially in the roles of Corey and Gar. They were not working for me as I first saw them, but everyone else I accepted as good casting and performing in at least an interpretation of their comic book counterparts, with maybe, I would say probably one exception. But all of them but one, really grew on me, and I've come to accept them and be interested in them as characters. So I feel really good about the cast. That said, I don't connect with the actress playing Rachel/Raven, maybe in part because I want a different, more stoic interpretation of that character, but also because I think while she is scripted to be this kind of fragile girl that's kind of having a coming-of-age arc going on, she's very emotional. I don't find her intense emotional moments convincing, especially when compared to the more subtle and realistic performances of some of her female co-stars. My hope is that both her character will change over the course of Season 2, and she will be less of a central focus now that the Trigon story seems to be done, at least for a while. I think this actress could still be a great fit for the character for me, but I'd want them to take her in a very different direction in order for her to work for me. As far as stunts and visuals go, as it was in the first season, the fighting continues to be really solid. The choreography and the way they shoot it and stuff, especially for TV, I'm really enjoying it, and feeling the brutality and stuff like that, and the impact, and so yeah, that's really been working for me. The CG in this episode, I think, was way too ambitious with the character of Trigon. Please use makeup for that character next time. You totally could have used a suit and makeup to do the same thing. And I know that you would have had to do some things with the legs, maybe in far-off shots when he's walking around, then you use CG for his legs or something, I don't know. Use a combination of the two, but they went full CG, and, after living in a post-Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame world where we've got Thanos, looking pretty good for a CG character, a humanoid CG character, seeing this humanoid CG character falling so short of that. Yes, I know it's TV. Yes, I know I should maybe be more forgiving, but I'm not going to be. So, thankfully, it doesn't seem like he's going to be a recurring character, and he wasn't in a ton of shots in the episode. Anyway, other than that, I have no complaints about the CG and the effects. It's TV effects, and so I guess I maybe do forgive a little bit. It's just CG humanoid characters that I'm just like, man, anything organic, you try to make move around with CG, and I'm usually going to have a problem with it. Even Thanos I had issues with. but otherwise, the effects CG, like the smoky Raven effects and, the other effects, they look good, they look fine. And still cool to watch, even though they don't look real, if you know what I mean. Okay, so are there any worthwhile themes, that might stimulate worthwhile thought or conversation as a result of watching this? Well, season 1, I think, was all about the darkness within and dealing with the darkness within us. The season 2 premiere, and that goes for multiple characters across the board, maybe all of them. The season 2 premiere doesn't resolve all of those issues, which I, appreciate, but it does move the characters forward, I think. I think all of them at least moves them forward a little bit, especially Dick Grayson and the Rachel Raven character. Now, in a pivotal scene in which Rachel is trying to free Dick from Trigon's control, she says to him, "This isn't who you are," or something very close to that. Now, maybe that's true, who knows where Trigon's control ended and Dick's free will began in this scenario, but this sentiment used in other stories with similar, less otherworldly situations, I think does a disservice to the reality of how humans work. Why is it then that when heroes are kind of giving into darkness, that it never seems to be who they really are, according to their friends and allies who are trying to bring them back to the light? Their friends and allies say, "This isn't you." But if that character is exercising choice, even in horrible circumstances, well, it is who they are. It is a reflection of who they are. And if we ignore and refuse to own up to the darkness in us, we won't ever really be able to grow out of those dark patterns of living. We need to have a sobering recognition of the darkness inside of us that is very much a part of our human experience and who we are. I'd prefer that supporting characters in these situations would plead with their friends using different words. That said, when Jesus enters the picture, he changes everything. Once we have put our trust in him to forgive us and to pay for our sins, take care of our sin record, he credits his record of perfect goodness, pastes it right over top of our own. In that moment, we are forever assigned a new identity as adopted royal children of God. And so we can call each other up as believers by saying, "This isn't who you are," when we see each other giving into sin. We still need to acknowledge and turn away from our sinful tendencies that still remain, even though we have new identities. If we want to be free from those sinful patterns, we still need to acknowledge our sin and turn from it. But as those who are being rescued, who have been rescued by Christ and are also in another sense being rescued by Christ, our sinful tendencies, whatever they might be, even if we fail time and again to resist them, those things do not define us. They don't define who we are. So anyway, that's a whole lot of yapping about a very quick and passing line, but that was part of, kind of the culmination of a major theme that was playing through the whole first season. But that's what stood out to me. All right, I have no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip and buy the Blu-ray seasons. That's a much better value. The first season is like $20 on Amazon, and that includes shipping, I'm pretty sure. And you're not sold on Doom Patrol and the other DC Universe streaming service offerings yet. You like this one enough to want to watch it and even risk just buying the second season based on how the first season was and the premiere was. But you don't like it enough to want to like binge it really quickly and have that be your experience of every season, to just buy a subscription for a month at the end of the season and binge the whole season at once. You don't want to do that in order to save money, and you also don't want to pay, that streaming service fee for 3 months in a row to watch it all as it comes out. Neither one of those is appealing. Go for that middle road. Get the Blu-rays when they go down to $20, and that's going to be the way for you to go, Pater. All right, well, it doesn't have an MPAA rating, but I would say it's an equivalent to rated R for violence and language throughout, and that's just commenting on this episode only. I'd urge you to do your own research regarding the content of Season 1 and the rest of Season 2. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, whatever you want to do to share this content and stay connected to it. I'd really appreciate that. And then I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. It is time for Extra Life again, and I'd love for you to be a part of it with me. Here's a recycled but slightly modified promo to tell you more. Once again this year, Christian Geek Central is participating in Extra Life. This is a charity that raises funds for the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals, which provides free medical care to children whose families could otherwise not afford it. And this is very often for critical, life-saving treatment. Joining our team only requires a willingness to ask your family and friends to consider donating toward your fundraising efforts. Participants also usually do something fun and game-related to draw attention to their fundraising efforts, like a special game night at your home or your church, or like me, you could do a crazy 24-hour video gaming marathon. Now, I'm theming it around video games, but really this event can be themed around any kind of gaming, which includes both video games and tabletop games of any kind. What you do to raise funds is entirely up to you, but I would love for you to consider joining the Christian Geek Central Extra Life team. As team leader, I'll be there to help answer your questions, provide some helpful tips if I can, and just in general be your fundraising cheerleader and try to draw attention myself to your fundraising efforts. You can get more information about the event as a whole at extra-life.org, and if you choose to sign up there, be sure to select Christian Geek Central as your team so I can get in touch with you and then just help in whatever way I can. Fundraising can begin at any time, but our main push is going to be through the month of October leading up to November 2nd. That's the annual Extra Life Game Day, when I'll be streaming my 24-hour video gaming marathon live and trying to stay awake without throwing up. More details on my live stream as we get closer to it. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.